Well said. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Mr. DeSaulnier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ranking Member, and thank you to the witnesses. Start with Mr. Reagan. As you know, Mr. Reagan, I represent a urban-suburban district in the East Bay of the San Francisco Bay Area. COVID has changed our world. We have the General Accounting Office working in my office with a study about the 10 largest metropolitan areas, so sort of the opposite of the last comments, where 65% of the U.S. GDP is. All of those areas, and particularly in California, where we're trying to transition from a car culture and 4-bedroom, 2-bath houses to higher density and higher transit ridership. In the Bay Area for years, we've aimed to try to get to 10% peak trips on transit. We have diminishing returns on transit agencies and democracy, sort of the opposite of Los Angeles. But when we look at New York or London at 90%, and for climate change, our black box for emissions, that's where our biggest challenge is. And then along comes COVID. The tradition, and because of our tax structure in California and Prop 13, it doesn't reward local municipalities to provide housing. They get money from commercial development and retail. Well, that's all changed. In the last 2 weeks, there was a study by the Bay Area Council, and again, we're probably an example of this, but it's happening in all these DC, Boston, New York, Chicago, Atlanta, that a survey of the major employers in the Bay Area, in San Francisco, but also in Silicon Valley and the business parks in the East Bay, the overwhelming number of largest employers say we're going to 3 days in office a week. The quality of life for people who have to commute an hour, 2 hours from the far edges of my district, the financial district of Silicon Valley, is greatly enhanced by that one of those two incomes being home with their kids. So that's the new reality. The San Francisco Chronicle did a story yesterday, and I think it was the Bay Area Council did this too, that they estimated it would be 20 to 30 years before the occupancy rate in San Francisco would return to where it was pre-COVID. So we spent a lot of time in California doing 410s, trying to get people to do 410s. We changed labor law. Now we've sort of got a gift when it comes to quality of life and emissions reductions and greater efficiencies, but we've got these infrastructure opportunities that unfortunately the MPO, which I used to be on, and the transit agencies want to keep spending money the way they always did. Like we're at 40% at BART of pre. It's not going to get back to 100% Farebox recovery in the near future. So being a friend of labor, ATU and operating engineers, how do we make this work and protect rank and file, but also protect the working people who are trying to get transit and be flexible, knowing the traditional heavy investments like the extension of BART into Silicon Valley, we're going to do that, but we've got to look at it differently, in a different way than we ever have. How do we do that in a collaborative fashion where we're really efficient about this? And I'd be happy to listen to any of the model has changed for 65% of the GDP in this country.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think that where we've seen some successful transitions from major transit aid organizations, and I mentioned this in my oral testimony, places like Atlanta that are looking at where their demand is. How do we evaluate our routes, both for bus and transit, and also our timing? If the traditional Monday and Friday 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. rush hours are no longer going to be the primary driver of ridership, how are we going to meet the demands of people in our communities? And I think you're seeing it in places like Washington, D.C., for example, where you're not seeing as much of the peak hour traffic, but you're seeing increased traffic at other times during the week, whether it be more people using the metro to come in on the weekends and visit our lovely museum systems here in the city. So I think as transit agencies look at their resources and look at how they're allocating their routes, their ridership, and how they can take the people that are, they're professionals who are operating these systems and allocate their expertise and their resources to better meet their growing demands. But I think that takes work. That takes work for people to study what is actually the demand in their communities right now.
And I've heard that argument in California. However, that's a small number of what our Farebox recovery was. I mean, it's 1 or 2% potentially. So the model is still, we can't keep doing things the way we always did. We have to adapt to that, but it's not an answer to what we've lost on the peak in terms of Farebox recovery.
Well, but part of it also is you need to have a system that will draw people in to the ridership as well. I mean, we saw it in California, in LA, one of their major lines, they operated 30-minute service. Every 30 minutes you're going to operate, and they saw their ridership increase by 17%. When you have a reliable service, you're going to see a lot more people that are going to be drawn to that as an option, as opposed to trying to drive or spend $60 on a ride share. Yet you're going to see more people as an opportunity.
Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Mr. Van Drew.
Thank you, Chairman. And just before I begin, I want to associate myself with the remarks of Congressman Stober, who just spoke a little while before. I would maintain